Hello there guys, and welcome to Mad Doc Minis, and welcome back to the airing cupboard. So in this video I'm going to talk about 10 things that as a hobbyist I don't do and I probably should do basically. So just having a bit of fun. Definitely none of this is intended to offend anyone or suggest that you shouldn't or should do these things. It's not like that. It's just, you know, sharing basically on YouTube just for a bit of a laugh. So number one, first on the list, dry brushing. And that may come as a surprise actually, but I'm not really a fan of dry brushing, particularly on the miniatures themselves. I sometimes do it on terrain, but it's quite unusual. I don't do a lot of it. I'm much more inclined to do like a much heavier version of dry brushing called like an overbrush. That's where you have much more paint loaded on your brush for, you know, terrain and things like that. So I do a lot of overbrushing, but not very much dry brushing. I just don't particularly like the finish, if I'm honest, although it is a good beginner technique. I mean, I'm not an advanced painter, by the way, and that's not what I meant by that comment. I meant that it's helpful for people just getting into the hobby as a technique for them to use, but I'm not a fan of it, and I can't say I really ever have been, actually. Yeah, there you go. On a similar note, edge highlighting, number 2 on the list, edge highlighting. Don't do much of it at all. Sometimes I'll do it on a centerpiece model, like a character model or maybe an elite squad. But you know, I can probably count the times that I've probably done it over a 30-year span in the hobby, maybe on the fingers on one hand. That's probably how many times I've ever bothered to edge highlight anything. So it's very unusual for me to do it. I know why it's done. It certainly makes miniatures pop on the battlefield when you're kind of standing away from them. I get the theory behind it, but it's just not something that I find worth doing, if I'm honest with you. So there you go. So number 3 on the list, painting handles. I don't use these painting grips and painting handles and things, and that's something I'm rather ashamed about actually. As a physical therapist, ergonomically speaking, it's advisable to use painting handles. They are much better for your health and for your forearm and wrist and hand muscles. But I've never gotten on with them. I've tried a few different types, never gotten on with them. I need to hold the miniature in my hands. It's just the way I paint. And to stabilize the miniature, you're supposed to do this with the hands, aren't you, and all that. Never got on with that either, I'm afraid. And these are things that you probably should do. You know, I'm not saying that you should be like me. I'm just saying I don't. I never got on with this business at all. If I need to paint something really delicate on the miniature, I like the, you know, the eyes on the Space Marine, the eye lenses. I will take the miniature and hold it in contact with the table. I can't really show you, but I kind of hold it down or maybe on its side in base contact with the table. I'm not squashing it or kind of crushing it or anything, but it's in firm contact, and then I use the other hand to paint the detail. That means you haven't got one hand wiggling around everywhere while you're trying to do it with the other one, because even that, I find that happens with that as well. So there you go. I don't use painting handles. I don't use oil washes or oil paints on my miniatures. I have experimented a little bit with it, and I don't like the results that much. But other people get really good results with this, and it's not necessarily something you should write off. But it's just, I don't know, I just don't like it. I don't like the covering the miniature with crap. It's not too bad a thing. That's fine. I'm good at doing that. But I don't like the idea of having to use the kind of mineral spirits to kind of wipe it off. I don't like the drying time involved with oil paints either. It's certainly good if you're doing a grungy, dirty look to things. And I do plenty of that because I'm not a very good painter. I rely on that look, if you know what I mean. But I don't like using oil paints and oil washes. And many people have said to me, well, why don't you do this? And I just don't, because I don't want to. I don't like it, you know. So there you go. It's not for everyone, you know. Just because everyone else is doing something doesn't necessarily mean it's for you. Moving on, so this is the 5th point, number 5. I don't use color theory. I don't intellectualize over color theory. I do in a very basic sense, I guess. So if I was doing like a color scheme on a Space Marine, I was doing like a quartered or halved color scheme, let's say, I wouldn't put red and orange together. Okay, actually that's probably going to look awesome now I've said that. I mean, you know what I mean though. That's the level I'm operating at. So a common sense kind of level, I guess. But I don't intellectualize about color theory. I never have done really, and therefore I guess some of my color combinations would probably make a proper artist kind of wince That's okay, as long as it looks good to me. That's the main thing, and that should be the main thing for you as well, by the way. That's something I'm a great advocate for, is that, you know, you should be happy with your own stuff. Okay, don't worry about what other people say. Unless you're entering a competition, then you need to worry about what other people say. I'm not one of those guys. So the other thing I wanted to move on to, this is number 6 in the list, is mixing paint. I don't mix paint really, or very rarely. And the reason I don't do that is I don't like the idea of having to try and replicate something that I randomly mixed on a palette across more miniatures. I'd rather have a log on what paint I've used and know what paint I've used and know it's going to be the same colour. I don't like the idea of mixing paint for that reason, and very rarely do. Sometimes, you know, I might do it for a one-off miniature or something, but bearing in mind I tend to like large armies and lots of miniatures, I'm always trying to think ahead on adding to the armies. I'm thinking, well, I want to be able to replicate those colours if I want more miniatures. So that's why I don't tend to mix paints. I go straight out of the pot. I do water paints down more than I ever have done these days. That's something I have done the older I've got and the longer I've been in the hobby. Not like when you're a kid and you just slap it all over the miniature nice and thick. I do that sometimes with certain things still though, so don't look too closely on the painting sections of my videos, because I'm still a bit naughty on that side of things. But anyway, there you go. Moving on, like on a kind of similar kind of subject matter here, the 7th point, number 7, I don't use a wet palette, and that probably follows on logically, right? Because I don't really mix paint. I mean, the idea of a wet palette is superb. It keeps your paint kind of fresh and watery for longer, so you don't use as much paint, so it's more economical on your paint usage. The theory behind it is great. I just don't like them. I don't want a moist wet box on my table, thank you. No thanks. I'm quite happy just mixing paint, or I don't know, I don't really mix paint, or like, you know, mixing paint with water, I should say, on like a tile or just like a plastic palette. I just don't like it, and for all the merits it has, you should look at them because they are good apparently, and I have tried one before, but it wasn't for me. So there you go. I don't like wet palettes. Airbrush. This is number 8. I own an airbrush, a cheap airbrush. You get what you pay for with airbrushes. That's something I will say before I launch into this. But no, I didn't really get on with an airbrush. I've only ever used it a few times on things. I think for me, it probably is quite helpful with weathering. Gives like a dusty look quite nicely. And you can do nice glow effects and things like that. There's lots of tricks you can do with an airbrush that's good. And one thing I certainly want to say is that I don't consider using an airbrush cheating in any way. I'm all for cheating, trust me. I mean, I'm Mr. Null Noil, you know, talent in a bottle. That's who I am. But I don't like airbrushes. It's too much faff for me. When I can just dip my brush into a pot of paint and rinse it off with some, you know, some water in a cup, that's such a quick process. I'm happy with that. I don't want to mess around with compressors and washing the airbrush out and flooding it through and putting more colours in, and no, not for me at all. So there you go. Airbrushes, not for me. Nearly there. 2 more points. 9th on the list, point 9. I don't use plastic cement, or virtually never. I think I probably used it once or twice in the 30 years that I've been in the hobby. I don't like it really. The reason is I prefer super glue, because although it's more brittle and it's more prone to breakage, if you drop a miniature then bits will fly off and things like this. It's definitely brittle, super glue, but that's why I like it. You can go back to your miniatures, if you change your mind about something or want to kit bash some old miniatures you did years ago, you can just snap the thing apart and start afresh, and it's wonderful, and I love that about them. And I'm always changing my mind about my armies and my miniatures. I do a lot of kit bashes and things like that. If I've glued something together 15 minutes ago and I change my mind, I think, actually that arm needs to go in a different position, I can snap it apart, clean it up and re-glue it. You can't do that with plastic cement. I mean, I guess there's probably certain solvents you can get and things like that, but it's not as easy a process at all, and for that reason I don't tend to use it. I'm not saying you should be like me, by the way. That is the right thing to do. Plastic cement really bonds and fuses the plastic together and will keep the miniature in one piece much more effectively, but it isn't for me and never will be. I'm a super glue man all the way. And the last point, number 10, is I don't magnetize minis, generally speaking. I do occasionally. The last time I magnetized a miniature was Lionel Johnson for the head variants. I magnetized all 4 heads, and I thought, well, the centerpiece model, I've been waiting for this miniature for kind of like 30 years nearly. So I was, you know, willing to do that and have the head swap on there. But I certainly am well past now the idea of magnetizing a full squad of miniatures. Now here's something, and some of you are going to disagree with me on this, I'm sure, and that's fine, but I don't think it's actually cost effective to do it across a whole squad of miniatures. Here's why. Time. Okay, this is something that many of us, not quite all of us, but many of us are really bad at doing, and it's placing a value on your time. And for me, I've been acutely aware of that really since having children, and I've got a dog now and a busy job and a household to keep up. And a lot of people have got the same stuff going on, right? It's nothing special, but wow, free time is just, it's gone to nothing virtually now. So I really value my time, and it's just not worth it to me to sit down and magnetize 10 miniatures. Now, the argument is you can get all the weapon variants in a box, can't you? So you get your money's worth out of the box. I don't know. Magnets cost a little bit of money, but the time it takes you, if you're really quick and efficient about it, I guess potentially, but I think, you know, even if you struggle to afford Warhammer, because it is an expensive hobby, I kind of think you're better off saving and buying another box. I do, and I know that's not going to be a popular opinion, and that's just the way I feel about it. It's just the time is really valuable to me, and I don't want to be doing all that and then worrying about lots of different parts and storing them. And you know, I can sort of see it on larger centerpiece models. You only ever going to have one of them or something. Like I did years ago fully magnetize a Baneblade tank for all the options on it. I wish I'd never done that. To be honest, I've never really used the modularity in it. I'm not a gamer, you see. This is the thing. I'm not a gamer, so I don't need necessarily to have that. I can go for what I think looks cool. So there you go. That's an important point, isn't it, I think? But there you go, guys. That's my take on those 10 subjects. Let me know what you think. Get a discussion going. And if you think I'm an idiot, you can let me know in the comments. That's fine. But I just, on finishing this video, I just want to say to any of you guys out there, if a lot of people around you are saying, oh no, you should be doing this or you should be doing that, and you just don't like it, don't do it, man. Don't do it. You know, do what makes you feel happy and what you're confident doing. Don't be swayed by the trend, you know. And I'm on YouTube. I know all about trends and things like that, but don't be swayed by it, because a lot of the time it's actually not that good, you know. It's just somebody trying to sell a method, isn't it, you know, a lot of the time. So just, if you want to try something and you like the result of something, that's great, but don't feel compelled to go along with a group just because everyone's shouting about it. That would be my final point. But yeah, if you've enjoyed the content, guys, please consider liking and sharing. It really does help the channel to grow, and it really does help me out. And if you're not already subscribed, consider giving me a sub. I really do appreciate the support, and I will catch you in another video soon. Take care, guys. Cheers.